Hey, what's happening everyone? I am Sir James from Gamerfuzion.com, and today I'm here to provide you with my review for Assassins Creed Chronicles China, which is the first out of the three-part series. And this saga takes place in China 1526 as the Ming dynasty starts to crumble. In this game, you'll be playing as a familiar character who was featured in an Assassin's Creed movie by the name Shao Jun, who is the last remaining assassin of the Chinese Brotherhood and was also trained by Ezio Auditore himself, where she set on an exact vengeance and to restore her fallen brotherhood. Now, going over the graphics, I really love the art style for this title. There's something about a game featuring something different than what we're used to. I love seeing stuff like this, and when I read more about this game, this is actually featuring the essence of the Chinese 16th century traditional brushstrokes, which is featured in the visualization of this game, which I got to say looks extremely wonderful and fitting. Now, true, I myself would have liked to see a full-fledged Assassin's Creed game where you get to roam around all of China, but for the purpose of this game, I think it was quite fitting, and definitely the visual aspect of the game is top-notch and something that everyone could appreciate. Now let's go ahead and talk about the gameplay. The way it's broken up is that this is a 2.5D style game, meaning that it's slightly different than a 2D game, and that the game has a little bit more layers and interactions that you get to have, such as traveling to areas that are pretty much further away from the screen, closer to you, hiding behind pillars. But thankfully enough, for those of you who've never played a 2.5D game, this game is kind enough to indicate areas with red paint, such as objects you can interact with, or where exactly that you need to go to in order to progress within the game's story. Now, one of my personal favorite aspects about this game is the combat system. Out of every single Assassin's Creed game that I played up to date, to be honest, the combat system for Chronicles China is the best one to date, and I would love for them to implement the combat system for other future installments of the Assassin's Creed series. What I mean is that every guard has a different way of how you approach them depending on if you want to involve more combat. Unlike other Assassin's Creed games, every time you get involved in the combat, all you have to do is press 2 to 3 buttons and you win. That's pretty much it, and that gets very unsatisfying after a while. Here in this one, every enemy that you approach fights differently and how you take them out. For example, a guard with a wooden shield, you can only take out their wooden shield by utilizing heavy attacks, then you get to break them, thus do damage to him. A guard with a metal shield is able to deflect your standard and heavy attacks, therefore you have to make your way around them. You may have other guards that have a major awareness around them, so meaning that they're more impossible to sneak up upon depending on how you approach them or how you distract them, and so forth. There's just many variations of guard types within the game that made the combat system a bit difficult at times, but extremely enjoyable and rewarding once you figure out a way around it, or especially since the game rewards you more if you take a much more stealthier approach. But overall, in the end, that the gameplay mechanics is pretty simplified, though at the beginning it is a little bit slow because you don't have all your equipment and or abilities, at least until the end game, where you're able to pretty much perform anything that you want, making the game much more satisfying. But overall, the gameplay mechanics was extremely enjoyable, and thus I think it's going to be welcoming to newcomers. Now, as we get to the sound portion of the game, starting with voice actors, they did a really good job portraying Ezio within the title, though the only time you're going to hear any type of interaction is usually at the very beginning or the very end of the level, and maybe a little bit in between as you're making your way from start to finish. And of course, let us not forget the soundtrack. Every time I play an Assassin's Creed game, I'm always impressed, and I enjoy listening to every inch of the soundtrack, which thankfully enough, since this is connected with Uplay, you could actually use about 10 to 20 Uplay points. You can actually download the main theme of the game and have it on your computer, and of course import it to your iPod or whatever device that you use to listen to. But overall, the sound design of the game is really enjoyable and relaxing. Now let's go ahead and talk about the lifespan. Honestly, this game has a really good lifespan, and here's my reasons why. First off, this is a 3-part series set, so the first one is taking place in China, which only costs you $10, meaning we still have 2 more story arcs to play. The second is collectibles. That is right, you can't have a game without collectibles, though if you search thoroughly, at least your first time playthrough, you're going to get pretty much about 90% of the collectibles, and you could easily go back with a level select option to get the ones that you don't have already. Next up is the reward system. In the game, there is a reward for every time you do good. You get to level up the amount of ammo you could carry for specific items, and or the amount of health that you have, so that way when you get in combat, you'll be able to survive a little bit longer, and pretty much just trying to complete your overall score. And of course, you also have a Game Plus mode, which will increase the difficulty, the challenge, and of course the reward benefits at the very end. But overall, for the amount of content you get for only $10, definitely pretty good replayability, and I definitely can't wait for the other two installments. As for the innovation, was there anything new here, or was this something that we were seen before? It's pretty much as to no surprise that we get another side Assassin's Creed game from its main story arc, because they've been doing this kind of thing since PlayStation Portable, but you guys appreciate the amount of detail, the effort, and of course the fact that they kept the artwork in line with the Chinese culture very well intact is really appreciated. And just everything about this game, the 2.5D style gameplay, I mean, if they make more Chronicle style game besides the main 3 story arcs that we're going to be playing for this particular title, then I would like to see continuation of this with different areas over the world. But feel free to let us know what you guys think. But in the end, I'm going to be giving Assassin's Creed Chronicles China a 10 out of 10. There was nothing wrong with the game. The combat system was enjoyable, the reward system, replay value, and the fact that this is only $10 out of a 3-story arc. Definitely well worth the money, definitely worth checking out. But until then, if you guys want to see my full walkthrough, check the link in the description down below. And until then, I am Sir James from Gamerfuzion.com, where we empower your gaming.